Welcome to the Insights Unlocked podcast. I'm Nathan Isaacs, Senior Manager for Content Production at User Testing. And our guest today is Purna Virji. Purna is the author of High Impact Content Marketing and is Principal Consultant and Global Program Manager at LinkedIn. Prior to joining LinkedIn, Purna previously led global learning and thought leadership programs for Microsoft. She's been named by Adweek on their Young Influentials list. She is a columnist and top-rated international keynote speaker who has been featured in The Drum, Marketing Land, and Adweek. Welcome to the show, Purna.
Oh, thanks, Nathan. I'm delighted to be here.
Purna, I'm excited to have you on the show. And doing some of the research prior to, as preparation for the interview, I came across a couple of stats, and I think it's a good foundation for our conversation today, and I want to just kind of cite those two statistics. And the first was from a presentation you made at Be to Believe in 2022, and I'll add a link to that in the show notes for listeners. But in there, you said, at one point you said, people scroll through about 300 feet of content on their phones each day, thumbing up and up and up. And the other stat comes from Microsoft, which owns LinkedIn, in a recent earnings release. And that was that LinkedIn members are engaging with 1.5 million pieces of content every minute on the platform. Now, given all that, how can marketers in 2025 cut through all that noise and connect with their audiences on LinkedIn, one of the most important social platforms and professional platforms out there, especially for B2B businesses?
Well, thank you. It's definitely the most important platform in my world. But,
Yeah.
but isn't that number bananas to think about? That's 300 feet. Doesn't your thumb just get tired listening to that? Just to put it into context, you know what is 300 feet? It is the Statue of Liberty in New York. It's also the Big Ben in London. That's how much we're scrolling. There's lots of content out there. Ignoring content or scrolling past it takes no effort. Even just that scrolling, it is just stopping to think about it. And if you want to get people to stop and engage with you, it really comes down to two things. It's all about what you say and then how often you're showing up. A big mistake we see lots of folks doing is like, oh, we've got this big important launch happening, so let's just go in and throw a little paid campaign beyond it, and then we'll just disappear for a while until we have something else. And then they say, why isn't anything happening? Or then you see the other side where people are like, well, I'm feeding into my LinkedIn page all the time. I'm posting content organically. We're not seeing too much. I guess that's it. What else is there? And people, they're just missing out on this incredible field of gold because they aren't being there consistently enough to really build and nurture their community on LinkedIn. And so some of the ways that they can do that is you really need to think about taking a more integrated approach to social media. I mean, regardless of platform, but especially so on LinkedIn, where it is built on trust. Now, I like to think about this, Nathan, in just a simple 3-step formula. It's like people need to get to know you exist, know who you are. Then they need to get a feel of they like you, they connect with you. And then third is when you really built that trust with them. And then once you've built that trust, you get so incredibly powerful. And that trust isn't just built overnight, right? Rome wasn't built in a day, neither is trust. It takes showing up consistently. Now, if you're doing only organic, what you're doing is you're only nurturing the existing people who follow you. You're nurturing a very sort of small field. But if you're only doing paid, then you're only planting new seeds. You're only doing ad campaigns. What tends to work best is if you can do both all the time and build an integrated paid and organic strategy both on LinkedIn. And in a way, it can help save you lots of money. Now, we're user testing. We want to talk about all the testing. You can be even smarter with your budget if you get to try things out organically, see what works in your existing audience, and then take that and boost it or put ad money behind it to reach a fresh new audience set who looks like that, right? So that's really, really the key. If I had to sum it up, I'd say, paid plants new seeds and organic is tending the field. So you need to do both if you're a gardener like me.
Well, and I think, because what comes with gardening, right? When we talk about gardening is sustainability. And if you really want to do it smartly, you want to be have in business a year from now or 2 years from now, it's doing that. It's building that community, having that long view. What are there sort of metrics that you can share with us about what key benefits are from taking that integrated approach with organic paid and even boosted posts on LinkedIn? How can combining these strategies help brands maximize their reach, their engagement, and ultimately that return on that investment?
Nathan, it's exactly as you said. It's like if you do only one, you can see some return, but it's we've all seen that sort of that meme or that drawing where it's like the iceberg and just the tip above the water and everything below. And so if you do both at LinkedIn, we've done our research to look at some of the stats and the numbers. I was genuinely surprised as well when I saw the numbers. Like conceptually that if as consumers, we're so used to navigating the internet, navigating different channels. Right? We're never in one place, right? It's never so linear. As I came on LinkedIn, I saw this for the first time. I learned about it. I'm going to buy immediately. Nope. B2B, especially longer buying cycles. So if you'll see an ad on TV, you'll see a billboard, you'll hear from a CEO. There's all of these different things that go in. And so, of course, it's the same on LinkedIn as it is. And okay, so here's a number. This one really surprised me. So if you are doing both organic and paid as opposed to paid only, then you see that followers who are exposed to both are 61% more likely to convert from a paid ad than if they were exposed to paid alone. So if that doesn't make the case for like, hey, and then if they do both, we really see that it reduces cost per conversion by 12%, and it lifts overall conversion rate by 14% compared to paid only. So like literally the organic doesn't cost you any money, but if you add it, it just makes your existing budget work harder. And I don't know if you're like me, and certainly I know there's a lot of us out there who've had budget cuts. We're getting increased pressure to show the value of every single dollar. Like we have to be testing all the time. Where else can we hear of like you do something that costs $0 and that will make your existing dollars work harder? So for me, I'm a big proponent of don't do one or the other. It's never an either or situation. It's an and it doesn't have to be as complicated or hard as you think.
If I look back, in my career as a marketer, uh, we kind of talked about metrics and stuff like that 10 plus years ago. But now, as a marketer, you need to know the effectiveness of that organic that you're pushing out, but also that paid and how it works together. And knowing those sort of stats is just uh, incredible. And, we talk about organic, and you talked about user testing, and we talk about brands. And what you've said in the past presentation is that um, brands' pages and their posts, organic posts, is a dynamic laboratory that they can test and learn from. What are some practical ways that brands can experiment with organic posts to gather insights that inform and improve their paid strategies?
That is a great question. So if you think about a company's page or an organization's page, typically the earliest or the most followers of that page will tend to be employees, prospective employees, or really diehard customers. So these are the customers who are really, really loyal. They really like you. And so if you can test different creative to a very warmed up audience and see how they react in a way, then that's a good sort of measure and benchmark for how you can reach more and more people. So on your company page, many people just think that there's a one-way megaphone to just like blast out like we have this update or we are doing this, and that's such a missed opportunity. Like yes, it's a company page and it's there to share your updates, but it's a company page on a social media platform. Like don't forget to put the social in social media. Your company page on LinkedIn should be an authentic extension of your brand, still in service of your audience, right? So if I could ask people to make one mental switch, whether it's your company page, whether it's your organic post, whether it's your paid post, your content is not for you. Your content is for your audience. And so instead of thinking about what do I want to say, it's like, what do they need or want to hear? And if you take that approach, you'll find that you can take some of the more formal updates, and then launch it in a way that is of interest. And I'll give you an example. So this is one of my favorite posts. It's from a few years ago, but it really stuck in my mind. It's from Samsung. Now, this was a post around the time of CES, so the Consumer Electronics Show, which tends to showcase, as most people know, like just the coolest and hottest and most revolutionary new tech, right? Most of the tech that tends to get showcased at CEX is so cool and sexy. The product would speak for itself. So Samsung could easily have gone out and be like, this is the cool stuff that we are showcasing. But what they did was, their post was a human interest story. They said, oh, why don't you hear from the product managers who actually built these products that we're showcasing to learn about how they approach it, how they built it, what did they think about it? Now, instantly it went from being a promotional piece to a human interest story, right? And that gets a ton of engagement. It gets tons of reactions. We find, yes, people look for like the likes, but we find that the more emotional brands, and we at LinkedIn, we did the study for tech brands, and we found like the top 10% of tech brands tend to get more of the emotive reactions, like the laugh or the insight or the applause, right? Those are really much more human engagement at an emotional level. And that tends to do really, really well, because B2B, yes, it's a very, there needs to be trust as a buying committee. You need to show a rational, trust-based decision for what you purchased. But at the end of the day, we're all human, right? Business buyers do need to you buy on a human level.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it also reminds me, well, first of all, I'm like, of course LinkedIn is tracking whether I put insightful or or gave a thumbs up. I'm like, I gotta be more strategic about that. But also, I think too, the importance here is and something I for at user testing, I also edit videos, and I have somebody who works with me, and I tell him often, we have to be editing this video to be bringing value to the person that's watching it for our audience. And I think our organic posts and on LinkedIn have to be the same sort of way, right? It has to be like, what's the value here? Why I'm killing some time in between meetings, and I'm scrolling through LinkedIn. I'm exercising that thumb, going through 300 feet. How can how can I get somebody's attention and give them value and have them stop and read that post? So I think that's good advice. The I wonder though, like customer feedback plays such a critical role in shaping both organic and paid campaigns. How do you recommend brands leverage the feedback on LinkedIn to optimize their return on advertising spend?
There's a whole bunch of different metrics, but there's three I want to call out for organic. These are just different analytics that you can get within the platform as well. So the first one is cumulative metrics, which is just understanding if any of the boosted content, so if you are boosting some of your organic content, is having an impact on your followers or your influencers following. Another one is you want to look at your content engagement metrics to understand if the audiences that you want to engage with your content are engaging. And then, of course, within Campaign Manager, you can go ahead and look at your performance metrics against your other paid and other side. But really, at the end of the day, it just goes beyond some of the metrics that you can capture. So let's say like a really popular, both organic and paid strategy that people can do comes with thought leadership, right? Nathan, you've heard that buzzword all over now. And it's making sense. Buying cycles are getting longer in this economic uncertainty. Competition is so much, and very often within a couple of different offerings, there's not much difference. I'll ask you this question. Like, okay, Nathan, if we had to think about how many average like companies there are that sell a CRM system in the US today, you'd probably guess above 1,000, I would say, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But if people who are going to evaluate, like if you and I started a new job and they were like, Nathan and Purna, you're tasked with choosing the next CRM system for our company, like you and I are going to be like, well, which company should we look at? And then we'll probably look at this list of under 10, maybe under 5. And so what happens if I'm number like 20 or 30 on that list? How do I stand out? And so executive thought leadership and building that presence is so important. And so increasingly, whether it's executives, whether it's subject matter experts going out there, great example, Rand Fishkin with SparkToro and formerly Mars, what you are doing with user testing, where you're building this podcast and going out there. It's like it's putting people in front, and you can even sponsor it with thought leader ads, etc. But some of these will not always result in your like, oh, what did this do for my reactions? What did it do? But what you will see later is my CEO getting more invitations for different podcasts? Is my page getting increased followers? Are my posts getting more engagements? Am I getting, yes, of course, you'll see MQLs, but sometimes that's a lot later. Like, am I getting more traffic, or am I getting, sometimes you won't even see more traffic, but are you getting better traffic? Where are your conversion rates going up? Your win rates? So look at pipeline impact, yes, but also intangible impact there. So look at those metrics. And then I would also urge people to remember that what makes people stop scrolling is what content that interests them. Right? So often we fall into this trap of thinking that, oh, humans have attention span of less than a goldfish. And that's not true. It's not that our attention span has fallen. It's that we're, with so much content around us, our filters have become much stronger. Our sort of tolerance for mediocrity is at the lowest ever levels, right? If we will binge watch Netflix all night, right? Hello, guilty. So many times we'll watch like 3 hour long movies, or we will watch trilogies of movies in a night. We'll watch what interests us. And so your content has to interest your audience. And so make sure you're checking, of course, your engagement, your reach, your sort of sentiment scores as well.
Well, I think that just speaks to the next question I want to ask about, and that is something that you emphasize in your book, high impact content marketing, and that's quality. And can you share examples of high quality content that directly influences the effectiveness and efficiency of paid campaigns?
Of course, exactly. The great content can move mountains. Like, I think if we just pause and take a second, and we'll think about so many things in our day-to-day life is a result of content marketing campaigns. So I don't know about you, but have you ever had orange juice for breakfast?
Sure, sure, sure.
Right? So
Absolutely.
many of us do. It's so common, but it wasn't always so common. It was the these orange growers had this surplus of oranges, and they didn't know what to do with this fruit. And they're like, we're going to lose lots of money because there's no way we'll sell it all. And so it was their ad agency who came up with this additional use of the fruit. Like, well, just juice it, and we'll like speak to and extol on the virtues of orange juice. And now we all drink it for breakfast so commonly. Same thing with diamond rings, right? During just about 100 years ago now, the Great Depression in the 1930s, De Beers was having a lot of trouble selling diamonds because survival, diamonds, very different things. And so it was their marketing company that came up with a diamond is forever, associated with eternal love. And now, decades later, it's common to use diamonds in engagement rings, right? That's what we'll propose with. So it's so funny. So there's so many examples of this, and every single day you'll see it. So whether it is a Monzo Bank, for example, is a British bank, and they'll have incredible organic content, and then they'll promote it as well. So they'll use a lot of humor. Surreal, which is one of my favorite accounts to follow. You've fully seen those, right?
I love that copywriter
Yes.
who works for us. He is amazing. And we will put some links in there. I bring it to the group just to spark creativity. It's original. It's not copying anything. I think this gets back into that creativity and quality that you're talking about. Is like, if you're just doing the same thing that everyone else is doing, you're not given. You talk about it. You said we have a low tolerance of mediocrity, and I think you just have to think about how am I delivering value, and how can I do it differently from how everyone else is doing it. You don't have to spend a lot of money to do this.
Mm-mm.
Surreal is not. They make a point of saying that in their copy. Anyway, Purna, I'm sorry.
No, I think that's brilliant. And then they take pictures of their billboards. And again, I don't know if they're like real billboards or like specs, but if they are real, then how brilliant that you're taking your existing campaign and doing that. And I'll give you my own example, what we do. So something that I run is that I run this global like webinar program at LinkedIn, and we'll take some of our content, we'll take snippets of it, and then we'll give it to our social media team to share and to put out on our LinkedIn for marketing page. And so then they'll do that. Sometimes they'll run sponsored ads for it as well. And then it just drives more views, and then there's such a residual effect. And so paid can help these organic efforts. And I'll still say, I'm like, hey, we can post some of this content organically. We can have some of our people, our employees, our customers share it too. But then we'll also follow it up with paid, and just overall, it's so much more effective. And so, regardless of the case, well, Google does a great job. Microsoft does a great job of doing both paid and organic, especially if there's a big initiative like a sustainability. Isn't that like the COP28 happened recently? So if there's a big push about that, make sure you're having both organic and paid pushes. If you look at the Copilot, yes, the Copilot's page on LinkedIn will post these little 30-second videos. So they do a really good job of videos that are about just different uses of Copilot, but then they'll have the people go and share organically about something else. So you get that whole balance and the reach. Plus, if you only rely on your followers to the page, then whoever follows you only sees it, or if they interact with it, then they're following. But if you get your employees and subject matter experts to share, then you're just exposed to a whole broader, wider audience. And again, you never have to force your people to do anything you want. It's their own social media page, but always encourage them and incentivize them and help them share the pride in the place that they work.
Are there any sort of like real, have you heard of how companies are successful getting their employees to do this in an organic, add value way, rather than just like resharing the company's posts? And then, there's no copy to it. It's just like, oh, I'm just resharing, like, whatever.
I think if one is you need a proof of concept for people to see it, because sometimes people think it's so hard to do or not. And so then if look at people who are already active on the platform, encourage them to share more, give them some kudos for it, showcase them as examples, then others will see that, oh, it's okay, because sometimes people are worried about what will my employer think. And like LinkedIn's really amusing. I remember even when my book came out, when my senior leadership came to me, I was like, oh, that's so awesome, Purna, that you are doing that. I'm like, that's so great, because then people feel encouraged, and then we can share our pride in where we work. So do that, then make it easy. If there's some cool happenings, you could even pass things out. So if I do some of my Innovate with LinkedIn sessions, there'll be some awesome takeaways. I'll just share them with sales. I'm like, by the way, this is a super cool stat. If you feel free to share it on LinkedIn, like make it easy for people, and then they can go out there and do it. And then hopefully the more they see it, it's almost like the snowball effect.
Speaking of quality, and speaking of being organic and spreading the word and getting your employees and your thought leaders to engage and share content, are there indicators that signal when an organic post is worth boosting?
If you see it getting a good amount of engagement and from the type of customers that you wanted to, then if you see it doing well, or like if it's a high performing organic post, and sometimes you'll see it, whether it's in terms of the number of impressions it might get or number of engagements it might get. And then it's like, hey, if this is doing well, why not put some more money behind it and then help it reach a more targeted set of audience, right? Organic, it's whoever is following you, that's who you reach. And there's no real targeting that you do. So if you do say like, hey, I am reaching, let's say, a car company, I'm reaching people, who really like my electric cars, and I've got a new electric car coming out, and I want to reach maybe people who might not already be my customer and brand new ones, then I could just boost it to like that kind of an audience with a high income, so I can control it. And then you've already proven it out. There's less risk in taking that, and especially with new formats as well that tend to be doing really, really well at LinkedIn, which like video, for example. And I know we'll delve into that in a little bit, but it just helps if there's already perceived risk about a new format, and how can I create this or not, and then see what works. It's as simple as that.
That brings up, and we're going to talk about the platforms themselves. And I think we're so busy doing our daily jobs, and we forget that these platforms, LinkedIn, but if you're on Facebook or Meta, you are on X, whatever it might be, these platforms are always also evolving. They're also evolving new things. But what are trends that you notice in LinkedIn ad creative that resonate well with audiences and drive conversions? Are there any do's and don'ts you'd emphasize? Video, text, carousels, newsletters, and AI. What should we be thinking about as we think about this integrated approach between organic, paid, and boosted?
In terms of trends, I think there's like really two or three that really stand out to me. The first one is video. You can't escape it, right? We've seen it grow so much. Right, like 4 years ago when I started at LinkedIn, I remember hearing about, oh, people are consuming video content 3x more than, non-video content. And then it's just continued to grow. In fact, year over year, if I look at last 12 months to now, we've seen a 34% lift year over year in uploads of video on the platform. It tends to see such incredible levels of consumption, of viewership, of engagement. And it goes and back and fulfills the three phases, right? People follow people before they follow brands. And we have been so attuned to watching videos, especially short form vertical videos. It allows people to see you as a person, to get to know you, to get to like you, to get to trust you. It's happened so much faster and quicker in a video format. And so we tend to see video still tends to get incredibly higher levels of engagement and conversion too. So take a look at that. What we are seeing in our latest LinkedIn Trends 2025 Trends report was that short form vertical video is really where it's at. And I tend to agree. For example, me personally, I'll tend to post like 3 minutes or 2 minutes or less videos every Tuesday. I call it Purna's Pro Tip once a week. And it's just me talking into my cell phone camera for 2 minutes at a time. And it gets so much engagement. It's just a way for me to be consistent without always having to be posting 24/7, which not all of us have time for. So that's one. The second one that's super interesting, which is I love this because it's an ad format only LinkedIn has. It's unique to us, which is called thought leader ads. So this is where a company, and the great thing is they don't have to learn anything new. So within an existing campaign manager account or wherever the team manages their regular paid ads, you can now boost an employee's or an influencer. This can be a customer as well. So you can post their content and boost it. So it will look like it's still. So let's say if user testing boosted your content, then in my feed, I would still see it as Nathan, like your content, but underneath it would say that, promoted by user testing. And so then it would be your incredible content that gets to reach this whole maximum targeting, like whatever you're targeting with your paid. So that has been incredibly powerful. It also helps build this like personal touch rather than the same old generic stock image ads and all of the things that you are fighting on a day-to-day basis with user testing. So those two have been, I think, the things I'm paying the most attention to, that we see that. The other one is a new and newest formats that people are seeing a lot of success with, which is sponsored newsletters, and then CTV or connected TV, which is awesome because I say like you can do omni-channel marketing just all on LinkedIn, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just take your existing assets. So you have a newsletter, just put it on LinkedIn as well. Do you have, little ads that you're putting on, over the top TV or, any kind of programmatic videos? Put them on connected TV, reach the LinkedIn audience network. Programmatic, you don't have to create brand new assets. Take what you have, put it on here and see how they all work together within the same platform. Because if I'm scrolling and then I'm going to see Nathan, your newsletter, then I'm going to see a video from you, then I'm going to get a little snippet of your podcast. Now I'm going to be like, oh, Nathan, you are really top of mind for me.
I think all that is great insight. And I think I did not ask this question, but I think it all begins with having a strategy, right? You have to say, why do we want to build this presence? What do we want this audience to do? Besides being engaging with us on LinkedIn, we all love LinkedIn, but we also want them to come off of LinkedIn, go to our websites, buy our product or service, right? And so we have to think about our strategy. It all begins with that. Even personally, you have to think about your strategy, even personally, what you want to be doing, not just for the time, this time right now, but 5 years from now or 3 years from now. What do you need to be doing to build that up? And make mistakes along the way. uh, people are going to be afraid to do vertical videos where they're just walking and talking onto their camera phones. And, but the only way you're going to get better is by doing.
Yeah. You learn by doing, which is the thing. And I always tell people that's the good and bad news, which is no one's going to remember a day from now. So if you mess it up, don't worry. Like a day from now, no one will remember. But also, no one will remember. So you should be posting more consistently. And it takes 90 days really of consistent posting to start seeing noticeable differences. And when it comes to personal brand, you want to have it ready before you really need it, right? That's what they say. Like you want to, whether it's your savings in your bank account, whether it's any kind of, your first aid kit at home, you want to have it ready and in place before you really need it at the last minute. So build your brand, and you can do it at a slower pace. Of course, best practice is like post once a day, every day. But realistically, who's going to do that? And realistically, as an audience, like who wants to consume that all the time? It's post consistently if you can. Like for me, I'll post once a week for sure. If I have anything else of value for my audience, I'll post a second time. And if not, I don't. Like I don't want to clutter any more than that exists. So just find a way to do that. And even as a brand, be present and have fun with it. Like here's the other thing. Sometimes when you and I were doing work for our brands and do it at work, like then you've got to like follow rules and stay in the boxes, and you can't test too much because you don't want to upend the apple cart and get yourself in trouble. But for my own self, I'm like, no one is telling me that if I'm going to look ridiculous on my own LinkedIn page, then that's okay. I'll look ridiculous maybe for a day and no one will care. And so I get to remember the joy of what it is to be a marketer, because I just get to talk about the things that I really like to talk about. I get to try different formats. I'll get to try different background music or no background music. I'll get to teach myself, editing on like the CapCut app, or learning how to, some days learning how to use filters to wipe out my under eye dark circles. And it's just you can have fun with it and experiment and go back to it. So there's just lots of reasons why you should do it. There's more reasons to do it than not to do it.
Well, I think that's a good place to end. I am really so thankful for your time today. I learned a lot on the show, and I think our audience will as well. How does someone learn more about you, your thought leadership, LinkedIn's thought leadership, and the work you're doing there at LinkedIn?
Oh, well, Nathan, this has been so much fun. Thank you for having me on. I am on LinkedIn at Purna Virji. You can find me there all the time, of course. That's where I am. For LinkedIn, you can check out LinkedIn for Marketing. That's our page, or just follow LinkedIn as well. Or you can check out my book, High Impact Content Marketing, on either Amazon or Barnes & Noble or your friendly local bookseller.
Excellent. Purna, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Pleasure was all mine, Nathan. Thank you.